In the winter of 1897, deep in the freezing Yukon Territory, prospectors during the Klondike gold rush did something incredibly strange. To survive the sub-zero temperatures, they slept with glass jars of a bubbling, foul-smelling potato sludge tucked tightly inside their heavy coats. They weren't crazy. They were keeping their potato barm alive. If you bake sourdough bread at home, you know the absolute frustration of spending days on a loaf, only for it to turn into a dry, crumbly rock 48 hours after it comes out of the oven. But those 19th century gold miners and the Victorian bakers of the old world did not have this problem. Their bread stayed soft, moist, and edible for up to a week in the harshest conditions on Earth. They didn't use modern chemical dough conditioners. They used a single, humble potato. Welcome to Old World Science. Today, we are looking at the factual chemistry behind the ultimate 19th century baking survival tool. And I will show you exactly how a potato physically hacks the molecular structure of wheat. If you dig into the public domain archives of the 1800s, you find this technique everywhere. It's not just in Eliza Leslie's 1847 The Lady's Receipt book. If you look at Fanny Farmer's famous 1896 Boston Cooking School cookbook, she dedicates an entire section to potato yeast. Why? Because breaking down complex wheat flour in a cold, drafty 19th century cabin was exhausting, painfully slow work for wild yeast. But potatoes are packed with massive amounts of easily accessible, free sugars. Adding a boiled potato base to your starter is like hooking your yeast up to a high-voltage battery. It supercharges the fermentation, making the yeast so robust that it could survive a freezing wagon trail. But the way they made this barm, and how they mixed it, breaks every rule of modern baking. You start with 3 older, raw potatoes, because older potatoes have a mature starch structure that yields significantly more sugar. Grate them quickly to prevent them from turning black, and place the wet shreds into a non-metallic bowl containing a 1/4 cup of unbleached flour, a 1/4 cup of sugar, and a tablespoon of salt. The salt here is brilliant. It acts as a historical buffer, objectively suppressing mold and bad bacteria while the yeast takes over. Now comes the critical thermal shock. You pour 1 to 2 quarts of roaring boiling water directly over this mixture, stirring vigorously. This intense heat does something vital. It instantly shatters the potato starch granules, bursting them like water balloons and converting them into a thick, cloudy paste. But here's the trap. You must let this paste cool down until it is barely lukewarm, around 75 degrees Fahrenheit. If you add your wild sourdough starter while it's hot, you will instantly deactivate the yeast and permanently destroy its cellular structure. Once it is at room temperature, add a spoonful of your starter, leave in a cool pantry, and stir it daily to aerate. Within 3 days, this liquid barm becomes furiously active, bubbling aggressively and smelling like acidic fruit wine. So, how do you incorporate this highly active liquid potato sludge into a dough? The bakers of the 19th century didn't use digital scales or calculate exact hydration percentages. They relied on the ancient sponge and dough method. In a massive wooden trough, the baker piled up a mountain of dry flour, carved out a deep crater in the center, and poured the potato barm inside. They whisked in just enough flour from the walls to create a thick batter in the middle. This was the sponge. They covered it with a heavy blanket of dry flour and walked away. Hours later, the immense force of the potato yeast would dramatically crack that flour blanket apart. That physical cue meant the yeast was at peak strength. When mixing the final dough, they followed a strict law. Flour finds water, not the other way around. They poured in warm water and folded the dry walls of flour into the wet center, judging the hydration purely by the physical resistance against their arms. Because of the gelatinized potato starches, this dough will feel ridiculously wet, sticky, and sloppy. Your modern instinct will scream at you to dump in cups of dry flour. If you do that, you will bake a dense brick. You must tolerate the stickiness and rely on time and patience to build the gluten network. But what is the scientific payoff for dealing with this sticky mess? How does a potato actually stop bread from turning hard? Most people assume bread gets hard because the moisture evaporates into the air. That is entirely false. Even if you vacuum seal a fresh loaf, it will turn hard. The true scientific culprit is starch retrogradation. Think of wheat starch like a sponge. When you bake bread, the heat makes that sponge swell up with water, making the bread soft. But as the bread cools down over the next few days, that wheat starch sponge naturally wants to return to a stable, crystallized state. It slowly clenches up like a tight fist, actively wringing out its own water. The water is forced out of the center and into the crust. The inside becomes dry and stiff. This is where the potato proves its genius. Potato starch is molecularly completely different from wheat starch. Its branch molecules contain massive phosphate groups. Imagine trying to pack a suitcase full of neatly folded shirts. That's the wheat starch trying to tightly pack together and crystallize. Now, imagine someone throws a dozen giant, spiky massage balls into that suitcase. Those are the potato phosphate groups. You physically cannot close the suitcase anymore. When the bread cools, these negatively charged phosphate groups repel each other. This creates what chemists call steric hindrance. They act like physical boulders, jamming the gears and physically blocking the wheat starches from packing tightly together into a fist. Furthermore, the potato starch acts as an amorphous hydrogel, trapping the water molecules so they cannot escape. By simply boiling a potato, 19th century bakers were unknowingly utilizing advanced polymer physics to halt retrogradation. The high levels of reducing sugars from the potato also trigger a massive Maillard reaction in the oven, giving you a dark, deeply caramelized crust. And the crumb? It stays structurally soft, highly moist, and perfectly bouncy for days, utilizing nothing but historical methodology and the natural laws of physics. This weekend, test the science for yourself. Trust the stickiness of the dough and experience exactly how the old world survived. If you appreciate an objective look into the factual science of historical food, subscribe to Old World Science. Stay curious, and I'll see you in the next one.